Anyone else?
Might go with going independent, but I'd probably just take any bare journey level.
Perfect. And is anyone in that vein, is anyone thinking they want to be an indie developer, like have their own games company? Yeah? Cool. Anyone confident enough to talk about what that game might be? Or you just want an industry for yourself? Yeah, far side?
Yeah, literally doing an assignment about it. Constellation Raven is the name of the indie studio. First game that we have is a fantasy Metroidvania. We want to focus on fantasy gameplay. It's a genre that we all love, and especially with like everyone wanting escapism in games, fantasy seems to be the best way to go.
Nice.
Constellation Raven is the name of the studio that I'm trying to put together.
And is that platform specific? Is it you Steam, or what are you thinking of releasing on?
Mostly want to go for Steam, Epic Games. Right now we'll be using itch.io, Patreon.
Yep.
Helps with crowdfunding and everything.
Nice.
But yeah, overall, we want to release on every platform eventually, but PC seems to be our main goal.
Yes, and probably the easiest one to start off.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you for that. That's great. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
So what I want to talk to you guys about today is a bit of my the experience of joining a new games company and some of the lessons within that. And these can apply to a AAA company that I work for, so a big game studio, or your own indie studio that you want to create. Just some of the lessons. Well, lessons, this isn't a lecture, but you know what I mean. Okay, so this is kind of what we're going to talk about this morning. So what's it like to join a new team? I'm sure you guys have this when you start a new year, start a new class. Actually, how many people, stick your hand up, you actually have a paid job at the moment, like part-time? Okay. Yeah, so you get the idea what it's like starting a new job, not knowing whatever you're supposed to be doing. But I want to talk a bit about how do you make an impact early in the industry. It's a very, very popular industry at the moment. There's a lot of competition, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So it's how do you make that impact early, and what does impact mean? What are the challenges of starting a new role? I'll go into that, but anyway, challenges the projects I had, and from the project that I'm working on, and opportunities to consider that you may not have thought of. So let me just go through this. So I worked for EA for about 12 years, I think. So I've worked with them. I started as a 0-hour contracts QA tester, which was not the most fun experience. So for those not aware, 0 hours, basically I'd work that day, and then they'd let me know at the end of the day if they were going to call me back the next day. So every day was a struggle to try and basically get in there with the managers so they knew that you were good enough to call you back to come in, which wasn't a great experience because you can't pay rent that way. But it was my in. So I didn't want to be a QA tester when I left university, but it was basically 8 hours of playing games with your mates for a lot of it. So it wasn't that too bad. But so I was with EA for about 12 years, worked abroad a couple of times. So spent a few years in Spain, spent a few years in Canada. I moved away from QA into operations, so project management essentially. And then I came back. So I came back from Canada. Me and my partner, we moved back, and I said, I want a new challenge. I don't want to work at EA anymore. It's been my sort of main company that I've worked for. I want to try something new. Something new was 3 months of unemployment, which was, as you imagine, not too much fun. So anyone enjoy job hunting out there in the group? Anyone enjoy the experience? Anyone enjoy interviewing? Yeah, there we go. There's a funny like interviewing. Love it. Well, interviewing sucks, as I'm sure some of you are aware. And I had to do a lot of it. So it wasn't a case that I walked into my next job, which my next job was joining Creative Assembly. It won't hurt my feelings, but has everyone heard of Creative Assembly? Yeah? Anyone play any Creative Assembly games? Any fans? That's a clap. I love it. I'll take it. So I've tried to join Creative Assembly about 5 times. This was my 5th attempt. I've always loved their portfolio. They're the biggest UK-based studio. I've been working on FIFA for so many years. I was so bored of sports games. I wanted the stuff that actually specialised in things that I enjoyed. So yeah, it was the 5th time I've applied for a role at CA. And I got the interview. Didn't really understand what I was interviewing for. It was those lovely ambiguous, come work on a new AAA title, science fiction. That was pretty much it. But I was in there thinking, I want to join CA. So interviewed for that, and it was for a project called Keaton. That was the code name. Never heard of it, because it was a code name. It was for a licensing producer role. Anyone, any ideas what that is? Any hands up? Anyone's confident to see what a licensing producer is? That's my thinking. Oh, hello. Come on. Okay, let's. I'm curious.
Is that someone who makes sure that the game you're making actually coincides with the licensing?
I mean, essentially, yes. Yeah. So it's making sure the licensing producer was making sure that the IP that we were bringing into the game was fully licensed, and then we go out and negotiate those licenses, which sounds pretty dry, but it was actually quite fun. So I went into an interview not knowing what licensing is, so I was blagging it for a lot of it. And it's been a few years since I've worked on a single project. I think the last time I worked on a single project was Crysis 3, when I was embedded with Crytek here in Nottingham, in fact, which was a whole other experience. And I've never been a producer before. Like, what is a producer? With you guys working on your projects at the moment, you are being producers, essentially, in the small-scale projects that you work on. But I hadn't done it before. So that was good. It was a milestone. But passed my 6-month probation, and then they changed my job title slightly to licensing producer and outsource manager. So outsourcing is starting to take over the industry a little bit. It's something to consider, but we'll go into details of that later. It's a route into a job you might not have considered. So, any questions or thoughts at this point? No, okay. So these are some of the games that, from their portfolio with CA at the moment. Has anyone played Alien Isolation? Show your hands. It's a great game, right? Quality game. I cannot confirm if we're working on a sequel or not. But really enjoyable. Like, you walk into the studio and it's full of all the BAFTA awards and really specialized studio. Going from EA, where they just slam a release every year across dozens of studios. It's good to have a bit of focus. So this is the project I'm working on at the moment. So, hyenas. Has anyone seen any of the footage for this yet? It's all right if you haven't, don't worry. Yeah, so we need to improve that. So hyenas is a PvP, PvE, PV, whatever. It's an online shooter, and you team up with your pack to steal priceless pop culture loot, which is where the licensing producer comes in, from the world where basically Earth's been, I think they call it the, is it the crack? Or it's just a horrendous name for it. It's basically the Earth's cracked, essentially. It's broken. So all the billionaires have moved to Mars, and they've employing the Murphs to go to Earth and bring back all the good shit, essentially. And what the hyenas are, they're packs of edgy characters who gang up and ambush the ships to break into their vaults and steal the good shit back. And all the merch is basically old school IP, which is what we secure in my role. And all the characters have very unique skill sets, and it's I think it's like 3v3, 3v3. I think it's like 3 teams of 3. So joining a new team. I think the key bit with joining a new team is networking. Do you guys network much? Yeah. So networking, it's a bit of a loaded word for the industry. It's how you progress. It's networking is getting to know the right people who'll give you the opportunities. So how do you network? So you guys are all networking today. You're meeting me, effectively. I'm on LinkedIn. Please, by all means, add me on LinkedIn. I try and drop job specs when they come up, when I see them, for things for like graduate positions, etc. So networking is laborious, it's hard work, but it's one of the most important things you can do. And networking within your projects, with your course, you know, collaboration, that's basically the name of the game. Be friendly and professional. It's strange how much we don't have this, but people come in and go into their shells a little bit. Listen and learn. Making notes is very important. I'm sure you guys are all well versed with that. No such thing as a stupid question. One of the better feedbacks I had when I first started one of my roles was that I wasn't afraid to ask a question. And when you ask a question, you seem engaged and that you want to learn. Majority of people don't do that when they start. They go a little bit quiet, don't want to rock the boat, don't want to seem like they don't know what they're doing. So that's a key element. So things to avoid when you start a new role. We're thinking that you've interviewed successfully, you've got the position, this is your dream job that you wanted to get into, but things you want to avoid when you start. So try and improve yourself on the first day. I was guilty of that in my role last year, and I've been in the industry for donkey's years. I came in like fire, guns blazing, thinking, I've worked for EA, the biggest game studio in the world. I know exactly what to do for this small little UK studio. And I had no idea what I was talking about, because I didn't know the lay of the land when I got there. Avoid keeping your head down until you're asked to do something. That's a very common trait. So the recommendation is not to do that, because it seems like you're not going to learn that way. And you're not going to know everything, so you shouldn't be expected to do that. Acting like you know everything, don't do that either. We have that too. Coasting as a new person, with the current environment with the industry, we have a lot of probational periods now. I was chatting to P about this before we got here. I was on a 1 month probation, and I'm a producer now. So at any point, they could get rid of me and get someone better. So when you start, there's no grace period of, I'm a new guy, I'll pick it up at some point. That's not how it works. It's a case of what are you actually going to be doing in that 1 month period to show them you were supposed to be hired. So a bit tricky. Any questions about starting a new position? Yep, over there.
So for an entry-level position, what sort of things would you be looking for in a portfolio? Would it be fully built up, or would it be just mechanics and a polished finish?
It depends on the role. So do you have a role in mind or a specialty that you might want to do?
So I was thinking technical designer.
Okay.
So would you need like a polished thing for that? Or?
I suppose it depends. With graduate positions, you're going to want the most polished version possible. Graduate position is a great entry level into the industry. There's very finite spaces, and everyone else in the room is doing the same thing you are. So it's making sure you give the best representation of yourself in your portfolio. So making sure your portfolio is with your latest and greatest work. Don't go over quality. Go over quantity for quality. Get your top 3 in there and show what best showcases you. And also, it doesn't hurt you to reach out to the recruitment team and say, can I get an understanding of your expectations for the application? So they may say, we expect these skill sets demonstrating your portfolio. So always ask questions if you can. Yep. Any other questions? Applying for a new role, new position? Oh, yeah, down here.
You said about not keeping your head down too much, but is there any is it bad to have your head up too much?
Yeah, so they can be the person who acts like they know everything. Which I think I was a bit like that. I came in saying, I think we can do it differently, which is a bit of a bold statement when I've been there a few weeks. So there's always a happy medium with it, but it's making sure you're touching base with your lead, making sure they're aware of what you're doing and what you're supposed to be doing, but also not being afraid to say, well, they hired me for a reason. I have these skills that I want to demonstrate, so put it out there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay. Okay, so how do you make an impact early when you start a new position? You've got that 1 month period, that probation, and they're the ones that are going to, when you show your best skills. Yeah, question, Daniel?
As something that sort of links with both of them, could you be overly optimistic and outgoing? Because lots of these things say you should be optimistic and try to act friendly, but can that go too far when you're trying to make a good impact?
Yeah, just no hugs, you'll be fine. No, it's a case of they want to hire. You want to work with people who enjoy working there. You want to work with people who are passionate about what you're doing. So I don't think you can. No, I think optimism, excitement about the role, 100% go for it. And that is a good way of showing they hired the right person. We hired someone. I interviewed a guy a few months back. He got the role, but he spent the first month of his probation stressing about leaving, being chucked. And it was a detriment to how he came across to everyone else because he was stressing so much about it. You start thinking, well, does this guy have to go? So being positive about that you've got that role. You guys are all working really hard to get into this industry that you're passionate about. Show that. There's no shame in that. Especially when I was joining a project which was 4 years into its life, and a lot of people were a bit burnt out. So you need that extra bit of passion. So it's good. Okay. Right, so impact. What do I bring to the table? So when you're writing your CVs, you're doing your interview prep, you've got the role, you've already kind of done this a little bit. You've kind of worked out what do you think you contribute to the role that you're applying for. So right now, do you guys, if you think about your current course, what you've been doing at the moment, can you sit here and identify a few, couple of traits that you think would be a benefit to a team? You don't have to tell us what it is, but anyone stick your hand up if you think that you can just sit here and think, I've got a couple of things in my mind I think would help a team out. Yeah, a couple? Yeah, a few? Yeah, so it's okay if you don't think that at the moment. You're definitely doing yourself a disservice because you will have skills, experience, something that you do bring to the table. So start thinking about that because that's what they're going to identify when you're interviewed. So you want to make sure that that's front and center so they know about it. So I would say, for me, for example, I think a strength of mine is not being afraid to, look like I'm wrong. I don't think ego's too much involved with how I conduct myself. So I'm all right. I'm not worried about being wrong in a situation where I think I'll go for it. And if I'm wrong, I'll put my hand up and say, yep, I've learned here. So I'd say that's a strength of mine. Skill set, I've got a lot of experience with managing diverse teams across the world. So I've got a good sort of skill set that I can show off in interviews. As an outsider, you're coming into a team, so you all have fresh eyes on things. So I don't think there's any shame on suggesting new things to contribute, just not what I did, where I was like, we're going to rethink the whole JIRA system and do it this way, which is a no. So you all have fresh eyes. Don't be afraid to suggest things. You'll have a lead who essentially will be your mentor. If you're lucky, Creative Assembly are extremely good with onboarding. EA is basically like throw you to the sharks and see if you swim. But with Creative Assembly, they were taking me through, I think I had 2 mentors, 1 lead and a dotted line lead. So I had so many people that I could lean on in an informal way and just be like, am I doing this right? Should I be doing it differently? You always have that when you start a new role. You feel like, I'm not doing enough. Am I doing it wrong? They're great people to touch base with, so definitely utilize them. They're not going to be like, hang on, this person doesn't understand 4 years of our productive methods. What the hell's going on here? Why do we hire this person? It's not going to be like that. Because remember, when they hired you for a reason. So they saw your portfolio. They liked what they saw. They want more of that in their game. Lean into it. So, any questions about impact? How you can make a good Yep.
I understand the lead role, but you said dotted lead
Yeah.
just then. What's the difference between both?
Yeah. So, I report into a executive producer, and my dotted lead is my development director. So because of my role, I sort of straddle licensing and production. So those are your DMs, your development managers. So I work a lot closely with them. So he's not my boss, but a lot of my world is around that. So you work with quite a few dotted line managers, so people who aren't your boss, but you basically, they tell you the direction things are going and you work off that. Make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other impact questions? Okay. The left side of the room are winning on questions, so it's time to step up. Right side. Right. Challenges starting a new role. Newbie surrounded by clever people. I mean, everyone has that, right? Everyone in this room is a clever person, except for me with the mic, probably. It's a case of what we do is complex. I think it takes a certain type of personality, whether that's creative intelligence or it's just, tech intelligence. Like, I couldn't go near C++, would have a clue. But you're going to be surrounded by those sort of people. You'll also be surrounded by passionate, creative people who all have the same passion that you do. So it's not an intimidating environment, but it can be to begin with. The industry itself is predominantly full of very clever people. I just slipped through the cracks. But they did recruit you for a reason, so always focus on that. You're working, people when they start, they've had their part-time jobs. You understand when you walk into it, you're like, why is everyone doing things the way they're doing? They have all these processes you don't understand. It's the same, obviously, with the games industry. And that can be a bit intimidating, but it shouldn't be because, I had it with my role. And I was I didn't understand why they were doing things a certain way. Repetition. You'll get it. Imposter syndrome. I've got imposter syndrome this morning. I'm standing up here lecturing you a lot on how the industry should be, but who am I to say that? But I try to remember, I've been doing this for 15 years. Hopefully, you guys will avoid some of the mistakes I've done and try and share that for you. Potentially jump into a project that's already underway. So that's what I did. So you're joining a team where they've most likely already started it. Making a game is a multi-year endeavor. It's very unlikely you'll start right at the very beginning. So people's speeds will be different. Like I've joined where everyone's a little bit burnt out. Everyone's been going for 4 years already. So I'm coming in with like piss and vinegar and they're like, well, can you just chill out a bit because we're kind of knackered. So it's getting up to speed with that. That takes a bit of a adjustment. Any questions about those sort of challenges? Yep, in the front.
When you talked about joining the team when it's already been made for 4 years.
Yeah.
Do you have to read the room mostly when you go into like a new job when they did 4 years? You have to read the room and see how they act before you talk.
Yeah, you don't want to you're you, so you want to make sure you reflect you. But at the same time, if I came in with some serious doubts on the project when I started, I didn't understand some of the decisions they were making, but I wasn't going to stand up and be like, well, why are you guys doing that? It doesn't make any sense to me. I think you have to adjust a little bit, give yourself that probational period just to, embed with the team and you get a feel for how people are. So, yeah, it takes a bit of adjustment, but they brought you on to help with that adjustment either way. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yep, down here.
You have said that games are multi-year periods. Is there an average of how long a long period game could take? Or could you have a small, short-term period game and no one might really bat an eye?
Yeah, so they tend to be multi-year projects. Does everyone know what early access is? So that's starting to become early access for those who don't. It's basically you do a soft launch of your game, which is quite common in indie titles, but the big studios are starting to adopt that more and more. Early access is basically it's a way of not giving yourself a hard deadline to release the game and having to crunch. It's basically get the game out in parts. And early access could last years. So you do a soft launch and then you've got years more of development, which is getting more and more common and people are more accepting, I think, of it. But yeah, so it's usually multi-year and it's rare, unless they're indie games, that it's within a year. Okay, any other questions? No, okay. So these are some of the challenges that Hyenas has had. And it hasn't been exactly smooth recently. And Creative Assembly are very well experienced. They're a veteran team. They've released some very successful titles, like the Warhammer franchise, the Total War franchise, Alien, huge successes. And a lot of the Hyenas team were made up of those people in those teams. And then people like me who were brought on as hires. But our release window, so we're just talking about early access. Let's just say the release window we had initially wasn't viable anymore. And we've had that planned for 4 years. Developers, so have you guys been taught how to document your processes? Is that part of what you do? It's, if you do have interviews, which you will, make sure you mention that. Documentation. What practices have you done? How is it done? On Confluence, shared knowledge. They may ask that in interviews. It's driving us, we are still dealing with it today, where early developers did their own little thing. They put all this stuff in the game. We found a pendant that you can put on the guns of a dildo. Someone had done that, whacked it in the game, didn't record it, and we're doing like captures for media and stuff, and suddenly we find a dildo pendant in the game, which would have us liable for so many different things, and it's documented. That's what we need. I wouldn't use that example in interviews, but you get my point. Staff retention and recruitment. So this is a new one for the industry. I think post-COVID, we're having a real struggle to keep staff and recruit staff, which sounds great to you guys, right? You're like, there's a job out there for me after I finish uni. But a lot of people who we're hiring or interviewing, they want full remote work now. Everyone's used to it. So I work on a hybrid model, so I'm in the office 2 days a week. 3 days I work from my office at home, which is great. I love that. We can do it. Making games is a collaborative project, but for me as a producer, I don't really need to sit in the trenches working with people. I do a lot of the administrative work at home. But I still have those 2 days where it's, free food and beer o'clock on a Thursday. So, and you have that communal experience. Working in the industry it's a fun, dynamic environment, but also you want that flexibility. But a lot of people now, they want to work full remote. So, as just a show of hands, you guys get your perfect industry job. Would you rather do that at home or in a studio? Well, okay, who's for studio? That's encouraging. Who's for fully at home? Okay. Who wants hybrid? It's the best one, definitely. Okay, that's good. But yeah, we're finding, we're offering people a job, they don't show up. It's so strange at the moment. Like software engineers, if anyone wants to be a software engineer or a lighting artist, Jesus, you guys have got it made. We need their constant demand. But yes, so, and at the moment we're having a bit of problems internally with upper management want us in the office. They pay for these big buildings, they put on these big events in the office, and we would rather be at home. And a lot of the rank and file would rather stay at home. So there's a bit of friction there. And then we've been hidden, and we were hidden from the world of what we were developing. 4 years we worked on this project, people putting a lot of hours in, and we prepared to announce it to the world. This is what happened. This is how we set it up. Can anyone see the problem here, how we set this up? This was IGN. We basically had a YouTube stream. What do we think might have got people not too keen on our game? I mean, we're bold here. We're going to steal the show. We're gonna show you the best game you've seen at this game show that we've done yet. So yeah, so you picture the scene. I'm in my office. The whole studio's in. Everyone's got a beer in their hand. We're about to go live, watching the countdown. Everyone's getting quite excited because, you know, this is like what we've worked so hard for so many years, and now we have to keep it secret from everyone. Now we can show everyone. This was the reaction after we showed it. You can't read these probably. I'll read some out. This was so boring. Watching paint dry is more of a show stealer than this. Character design is disgusting. We need Medieval 3. You can't make a big event where you don't have any gameplay to show off. Creative Assembly, the worst garbage you can find out there. What's another good one? Creative Assembly, why? Bad marketing, fire those managers. Absolutely disgusting. I think that was a little bit strong, that one. I'm not sure disgusting was on the cards. The game is a reference to bad games. Steal the show, zero gameplay. That's funny. Yeah, so I couldn't find a single positive comment on our reveal. Now, that's not great. Though there was a good comment. That's it, no echo. Does anyone remember, well, you wouldn't, does anyone know Echo the Dolphin? Yeah, come on. Me and Pete know. So this was an old Sega Mega Drive game, like decades ago. And in our hyenas tease, we had the sound of hyenas laughing in a black screen. But hyenas sound a bit like dolphins, apparently. So everyone's like, a Sega making a new Echo game? That's amazing. It wasn't. It was a double disappointment for everyone. So, not a great reaction, and I was standing there with the rest of the studio, with beers in hands, people were looking at their phones, seeing the reactions coming in. It was just dead quiet in the room. It was gutting. Like, people were absolutely devastated. The marketing team, most of them quit in a year, I think. They're all gone now. They had all replacements. People were devastated because this isn't like your normal go to a bank, do your 8 hours, leave the bank, go home. This is a creative experience. I mean, you guys, you work on your own personal projects, I'm sure. If you push yourself really hard to do that, you put that out to the world and it gets eviscerated. As the online community aren't the friendliest bunch, but it was not great. And how we showed the event was terrible. We didn't show any gameplay. We showed a CGI trailer that didn't really give you any sort of explanation of what it was. And then we had our studio director talk for about 40 minutes in an interview, and that was it. I mean, I was bored, and I was like working on the project. Not great. So if you guys are thinking, how are you going to do your indie games, maybe? How are you going to reveal it? Don't do it that way. Let your game do the talking. That's the key bit. You know, some middle-aged old person talking about how edgy a game is to a bunch of young people, that's not going to get anywhere, which was a hard lesson that we learned, but it happened. Don't set yourself up for like, this is the best game you're ever going to see, when it's not, obviously. Give the audience something to be excited about, essentially, and that's gameplay, right? I mean, if you watch like the trailers for like Arcane, that's a little bit different. Like League of Legends is a bit different to what the actual gameplay is, right? But yeah, it was really tough on the team. And I was in the weird situation of how did management handle that? Because everyone was just gutted. Like, why work hard when everyone's going to hate what you do? Anyway, so we had an emergency meeting the next day where, to be fair play, the studio director stuck his hand up and went, I got this wrong. You know, and he got a lot of abuse online. So fair play to him coming back in and actually taking that. But he was basically saying, I made a mistake. I didn't represent us as a group well enough. And he apologized. And then we got back to work. Hands up if you know what agile methodology is. Oh, he knows. Agile. So brief one quickly. You're making a car. You tell your customer, I'm going to put round wheels on the car. Customer says, I want square wheels. you make square wheels, and then I'm going to make it green, and customer says, no, I want it red now. Agile methodology, touching in with your consumer, making sure you adapt the plan with a fluid delivery date. So Agile, people wanted gameplay. So that was our new focus then, getting a gameplay trailer. So we've started a bit of we got a new guy in to head up marketing, who is definitely a cross between David Brent and a terrier. He's super, super keen, passionate. That's exactly what you want. So he was like, okay, let's give the community lots of little incentives, little like monthly drops, bit of teases of what we're doing, what we're planning, and closed alphas, getting people hands-on with the game. Closed alpha, biggest development tool a project can have. So in case anyone doesn't know what closed alpha is, basically it's a very limited release of the game to a select group of players and get their feedback. Okay. So yeah, we've been dropping some content. It's a little in-game videos. And we tease basically the alpha so people get engaged with it, so people want to join up and sign up. So here's some of the feedback. I like a lot. Looking damn good. Oh my God, they have a Sega arcade. Is there a Master System 2, please? Love the giant A08, which is a Roland, in the middle of the one room, which is great to hear because we see what they like. Like we've got one of our merch loot in the game that the player collects is a dead rat. And I hate that merch loot. I'm in so many meetings where like you're supposed to be getting this stuff from Earth and they're supposed to pick up a dead rat. Like we're trying to represent the New York ship that we're doing. Yeah, in the game, when we did the closed alpha community, people loved the dead rat. So get your feedback, Agile, adapt to it. What do they like? So we lean into that weird bit of humor. Any thoughts about the challenges or questions about what Hyenas has been going through? Yeah, over here.
After a bunch of negative comments like that, how do you really motivate a team to get back to work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's important to give the team a bit of a grace period of like, accept that sucks, essentially. I think we had about 24 hours of like, talk about it, vent about it. We had a town hall meeting. We always have an internal Thursday town hall. And they just basically let people vent and be like, why did you do it this way? This was always going to be a silly setup. And the management just had to take it, which I think is a big part of leadership. I was impressed with how they handled it. I was not impressed with how they delivered the product, but how they reacted to it I thought was really, EA would have just been like, fired, whatever, get out my face. But they were like, no, we did bad. We should be better next time, and we're listening. So yeah, I think it's just not ignoring the morale of the team. It's the most important bit. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Yep, listen.
You mentioned that when the game was first announced, you were working on it for 4 years, and then after that, you focused on gameplay after that.
Yeah.
What were you working on before it was announced?
So a lot of it was, I'm in a lot of meetings with our creative director where we come up with a roadmap of what we want the game to be, like level design, what's going in the game, what's the gameplay going to be like. So you spend a lot of time doing that. It takes a long time to get the licenses for the assets for us to then create. There's so many different levels to it. It's building up the team as well. So you start small usually, and then you hire people as you go. Because I was 4 years into it before I joined. So you can create an asset in a week, but if that fits in the level, then you get rid of it and you get another asset. It's another week. So these sort of things add up. So you experiment. It's a long period of experimentation until you get to a product, then you start ramping up. Okay? Any other questions? Left side of the room. Yep, okay.
Are we going to see a trailer for this game?
I wish I'd thought to include that in my presentation. Pete.
Yeah, I've sent it to the HE guys.
Yep.
Forward it on to the FE guys as well. Not a problem. College guys, sorry. So
Yeah. There is a trailer out there, the aforementioned. You could get your thoughts on it, actually. Yep, down here.
You were discussing how you had your assets built. When you made your game, did you just design all the levels first and then have a variety of generated assets to put into the levels?
Yep.
Or is it slightly randomly generated?
So you have procedural assets that go in to fill out a level. So you'll have placeholder procedural assets. So you build the level first, so block out. Then you add in your procedural assets to see what the environmental space looks like, and then you start to refine and level of detail. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So what I want to talk a little bit about now, just the last final section, is some alternative opportunities to consider when you're thinking about joining the industry. A lot of people think, as I did, I graduate, I then apply for other graduate positions, or I apply for initial positions in a studio. But there's some other routes as well. So third-party studios, so external partners to a studio, are becoming a lot more common these days, especially the last couple of years. And what that means is Creative Assembly partner with I work with this studio in China who create assets for us. So they're a studio, they're not a studio, they're a production company that work with multiple partners on different assets delivered. And as an outsourced manager, I work with them to deliver the assets and ingest them into the game. That's a lot of people, manpower heavy requirement from the production team. So when you're looking at roles in the real world, broaden your horizons a bit with it. These sort of opportunities are out there because outsourcing is getting much more critical path with production. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Yeah.
If you outsource your work to like other studios, does that not remove from your unique selling point in the art aspect?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we basically tailor it to a specific requirement of an asset. So I'm trying to think, right. So with my role, so these are our specialists. So we got the Prima here. Her outfit here, we can change that. And we basically give them reference material to the outsourced team saying, right, we want her to be like 80s things. Here's some reference points. So we have that creative input, but they just do the legwork on it, essentially. It's a good question, though, because there is that risk with outsourcing. And I've had a few pushback from department heads, but I'm like, we've got an outsourcing resource. Does anyone need it? They're like, well, no, this is our vision. We don't want to farm it out. So it's a balance. But outsourcing prevents crunch. With crunch is when, during peak, people like you and me have to work crazy hours to hit a target and burn the team out. This way, it just augments your, your arsenal, essentially. Okay, any other questions about this new approach to game producing? Yep, Daniel?
Aren't you worried that if you're outsourcing that they could leak anything, or do they have to sign NDAs as well?
Yeah, so they sign NDAs, and I control the delivery. So we use Box a lot, so secure asset delivery site. There's that risk, but we have that with our, what they call them, not influencers, they're called, we have a select group of gamers who play the game and give us creative input on how to change it. God, what are they called? Yeah, but no, it's very common, like closed alphas, everyone could leak it. But we had one person who did start streaming it live on their YouTube website, which was very foolish, and they got instantly canned and thrown off and could have been sued. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So yes, just some final thoughts. Stuff we talked about with the challenges could equally apply to any indie projects you might be thinking of. So any sort of creative body of work, if you're, just show of hands, is anyone working on their own private sort of project? I know we're in the corner. Yeah, so is it fair to say you guys are working really hard on that? Are you really passionate about it? Are you nervous about showing that to the world? Not nervous? Good? Confident? Yeah. I mean, I have my own personal projects that I work on, and I'm nervous about showing that to the world. But it's a case of that's why you do it. That's the exciting bit. Start thinking about when you do get your first job in the industry, start thinking about what you want to achieve in that first month, that real make an impact. What do you want? What goals do you want to achieve in that? Like, you know, do you want to start a new process with them? Do you want to establish yourself in the team, network with everyone, send an email to everyone you work with, introducing yourself, making sure that's been done, because that's hard, because a lot of us prefer just to hang out on our computers, not with people, but it's a really important part of the job. And enjoy yourself. Good news, you guys are all applying or working towards the most fun industry there is. That's very, very successful. So enjoy it, that's the most important bit. And that's it with me. Any questions? I'm going to hang around. She's what we're doing for time. Yeah, I'm going to hang around and make sure if you have any questions about the... yep, go for it. Go on.
Hi, I'm one of the games tech tutors here at Confetti. So a lot of our students came on the game tech course because they lean more towards the technical side rather than the art side, so a lot of programmers. Question we get asked a lot is what sort of things should they be putting on their portfolios, or how do they stand out as a programmer? Is it game projects? Should they be putting not source code but snippets of code and things like that? What sort of thing would you be looking for in a game programmer?
So one of the most useful things is if your portfolio is a website, especially with a programmer, you can do a deep dive on the code, because that's what most interviewers will look at. If they're going, they want to see a demonstration of a body of work. They don't just want to see a link to a Steam page with a delivered product that's, you know, out there that demo people can play. They want to actually see how you wrote the code. So you want to be creative. You want to maybe have one page showing off a little bit of blurb of the game you made, or the code, and you know, with a video of it. And then within that, there's a deep dive of how you did it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Cool. Anyone else at the back? No, good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to hang around now. Please feel free. If you've got any questions, you aren't comfortable speaking out in front of everyone, I'll hang around here. Please ask me one-to-one. And if not, just thank you for your time. Cheers, guys. Okay. Yeah. Let's do it. We just need to get to YouTube. You can all judge for yourselves now how terrible this... Well... Yeah, it's the announcement trailer.
Discover lots of little tips that could save you hundreds of pounds.
I said stop playing with the merch and move. Can't you see we're busy?
Yes, very busy, darling.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome. That was incredible. Really, really informative. So yeah, like Adam said, he's going to sort of sticking around for a little bit. What time are we on? Are we okay to? Oh yeah, so yeah, we can probably stick around here for a little bit longer as well. I wasn't sure if we need to move out to the bar, but they don't need this space till 12, so we can probably stay in here. Also, just an opportunity to sort of plug it as well. You know, Adam mentioned that the industry at the moment, you know, the really sought out areas are software engineers and lighting artists. 4 till 6 today. You've got Reese, who's giving a talk on a workshop on C++. Which obviously is going to be super important for software engineers. And on Friday, we've got a lighting artist coming in who's doing a workshop. So if you haven't signed up for those events yet, please do. But yeah, that's it from me. So yeah, final applause for Adam. Thank you.